fifth chapter in our program today. Started losing my voice a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and change the QR code here. In the fifth chapter, we're going to talk about solar emergencies. What are the must-haves and what should you have ready? So, in this chapter, we're going to go over when the power goes out, solar can literally be a lifesaver. But the question is, do you have the right setup when it happens? What are those essentials that you need to have to make it work for you? And do you want lighting, refrigeration, critical loads, and we'll kind of cover some of those and go over the benefits, the ups and the downsides to each one of them. Whether it's a hurricane, wildfires, blackouts, solar can make the difference in making your life very easy. Many a times I've looked outside and seen the power out during storms and had no idea that all my neighbors were dealing with outages. This is one of those most practical uses of solar. So let's get to some of the good points here. So I'm going to start off by identifying essential loads. This is where you're going to want to go through and identify in your house those things that you could not live without. And this goes into what we call the essential loads. And I look at them as, well, I'm going to need my lights. And maybe not all of your lights, but you are going to need some key lights. You're going to want your fridge. You're going to want your phone to be powered. You're going to want any medical devices. And separate the list from those essential loads to those non-essential loads. You're going to want to, you can build an essential loads, and this is what we call a sub panel off of your main panel that has only the essential loads, so that when this happens, you can run those loads fully off of solar. Now, most people, when they hook up a essential loads type panel, they run it off of solar all the time to supplement, to basically take those off of your grid usage and lower your electric bill and stuff, which is a great way to do it. Don't look at solar as, I'm only going to use it during emergency cases, which you can do. You can set it up in an UPS type environment, a backup pipe power, where it's there, it's always charged up 100%, and when the power goes out, boop, it switches over and it takes over. A lot of the generator companies, Generac is really big about running commercials saying, when the power goes out, and they show the power going out and everyone's sitting around watching TV, and then the power comes back on and everything's fine. In a real outage, and I suffered through one last year with a hurricane here in Florida, and in a real outage, that's not the way it works. In a real outage, the power goes out, and about 4 hours later, all the backup systems for the cable company, the cell phone towers, the everything that has power goes off. Now, you have power. You can charge your phone, but if there's no cell towers for you to talk to because they have no power, it doesn't matter. You can plug in your TV, but if there is no cable TV at the corner having power, you're not going to receive it. You can have your internet router, but if the cable internet has gone down and they don't have power, you're not going to have it neither. So that's why you have to think about these things in a little bit bigger terms. If you have Starlink, then you could power your Starlink, and that could be part of your essential loads, and then you would have internet. And that would allow you to watch streaming, and that would give you internet access, and that would probably make your text messages and stuff from your phones work. And that was kind of what I had to deal with last year when the power went out, is we lost all of these essential services. Now, initially, they've all got backup systems. They're all there intentionally for that. But when a hurricane comes through and takes out the power grid, those backup systems have an expectant life expectancy, and they may be 2 hours, 4 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours. But when your power's out in a long term like that, they all go down, and you lose them all. So, the figure out what the minimum wattage that plus the battery, and what it would cost you to just have the solar system running with nothing connected to it. Because when the power goes out, the first thing you start doing is you go into conservation mode. Well, I can live without this, I can live without this, I can live without this, I can live without this. But even having the inverter there and on can cost you some power. And a lot of even batteries have BMSs, and the BMS can use some variation of power over a period of time. So let's look at a basic solar system with a 6000 XP in your house. It may use a kilowatt a day just idle, sitting there doing nothing. And so those are the type of things that you really need to take into account. I worked with an inverter a few weeks ago when I redid the 12-volt solar shed, just for the purposes of showing you guys how to build a 12-volt solar shed. And it actually had a really cool feature that when there was less than 15 watts of power usage, it would shut the inverter down, and it would basically go into this really super conservation mode where it used almost no power until it sensed that there was a need for it, and then it would turn back on. Now, essentially what that allowed it to do is to go into where it was using a few watt hours a day when the power wasn't being used, and then it could come back on. Now, there were some downsides to it. For example, I use Shelly devices to turn off and on light switches so I can control them with my phone. Well, they don't have power if they're not powered. So if the inverter's off because it doesn't sense the power usage, and there's no way to turn them back on. So those devices didn't work properly when it was like that. But in a typical power outage like a hurricane or something like that, that would be a definite mode that I would immediately flip on so that I would have no usage when there was no usage, and usage when there was usage, but I didn't have that idle consumption. So those are the kind of things that you've got to think about. Can your inverter handle that? Can your solar system handle that? My 6000 XP that's in my RV, it can't handle that. It can't do something like that. But that system in an RV would be in an RV, in a shed, or as a backup system for a house of some kind, not the whole house, but a backup system, an emergency system for critical loads of running a refrigerator or freezer would be fantastic, because it would basically say when the refrigerator shut off, it was off. And so the making sure that you have the right inverters. The one thing that a lot of Amazon, a lot of these major providers and stuff, they're still selling these inverters that are not safe for a lot of your critical electronics. And I know you hear it all the time when they talk about generators being pure sine inverter generators. You need to make sure that your inverter itself is not that it is a pure sine wave inverter. And if you've got access to an oscilloscope, which I recently got one, you'll find that even some of those aren't really as clean as they claim to be. So you need a good power, because the last thing you want to do is have a power outage and then damage your refrigerator, or damage your laptop, or damage one of your other devices because you plugged it into something that just had this dirty power and stuff like that. That's where devices like a chargeverter, where you take that dirty power and you can pump it into your battery system and use it for your solars, is something when I'm recommending on a consultation. So if someone schedules a consultation with me and they're talking about a solar system that's used for this type of a purpose, I almost always refer them to a chargeverter, because a chargeverter allows you to use a cheap, dirty generating old generator that you can buy off of, used, and pump it into your batteries directly and not worry about it harming any of your electrical devices, because it cleans all that power up, converts it to do just the battery charging, and then your inverter can use it out of the battery charging. The nice thing about that is I'm not running the generator 24/7. I run it at maximum efficiency for an hour or two to charge the batteries and pull it at 80 or 90% of its maximum capacity all at one time, and then shut off, and then I don't have to run a generator for several days until I end up back in these scenarios where my batteries start to get low after a couple of days. It's a much more efficient way of doing things. If you have any questions about that, please send me an email or put a note in the comments below, and I'll be glad to answer them for you. But it's a really important point for you guys that are building these off-grid systems that want to use it in emergency circumstances like that. There's a couple of easy workarounds that you can get away with a lot less expensive. Instead of going out and buying the $3,000 generator so that you can run these things, you can buy the $400 generator with a $400 part. And when the generator wears out, you can just get another generator and not have to worry about the parts and stuff being bad. Important battery chemistry that you're paying very close attention to, the different battery chemistries that you're doing. If you're using a solar system and the BMS in a LifePod battery will save that battery from being damaged, but in an off-grid situation where you're running medical devices and things like that, it's very possible that you could cause damage to your lead acid batteries and those type of things. So you want to be careful not to have the damage those type of equipment. But if you're doing it because you have to, because you're running medical devices, that's one thing. But if you're not doing it for medical devices and stuff like that, then you need to be very careful about that. And that's one thing that you need to test before you get into this environment. The one thing that I learned through the hurricane last year is that nothing allows you to perform in an emergency other than performing in an emergency. My suggestion is all of you who think you have a system that can back up and allow you to live off grid, that allows you to work, is test it. Don't assume that it's going to do anything the way you think it is going to do. I had all of these equipment, all of this stuff, knew exactly what was going on, but never had used some of it in a real scenario. And there's nothing like a real scenario to give your system a test. So watch out for your battery types, battery chemistry, making sure that you understand what damage they're going to do, and figure out what you're going to do when it happens. How are you going to charge your batteries? Always have a backup plan. Always have some way to get things back, even when everything goes the wrong way, which it did for me. I had a perfect, just so you all know, my RV was 100% off-grid. It was parked, and it had 4 feet of water around it, and I had no access to get to it. All I had to do is get in that RV and drive 50 miles inland, and I would have lived through everything with that hurricane with absolutely no problem. But instead, I had to suffer through having no solar system other than a small 24-volt system that was in the coffee trailer and a couple of 500-watt panels to live through that entire thing off-grid with no power for a week. And I don't mean no power like, hey, the guy across the street had power. I mean like no power anywhere. All the equipment, cell phones, cell towers, cable companies, internet, all of it, everything gone. And sadly, I had the RV sitting right there. And all I could think to myself is, I will never do this again. I will never get myself in an installation. I run tests all the time now and that's what got me involved in doing this and producing these videos and making these videos for you guys, is that it happened to me. I lived through it, and I want to make sure that everyone understands the importance of it. A small generator for a backup, even a small generator can be a lifesaver, because you can go into emergency mode, you can shut down everything except really super critical loads, and you can get things charged up. I have a small little champion generator that's 2,000 watts that I can use in a mission critical place to charge my batteries that way also. But I did not assume that it would just be able to do it. I had to make sure that I could connect it, I could actually do it, and I actually lived a month like that where I used that as the backup plan for getting power into my RV. Didn't just assume I could do it. DIY kits for longer term are very scalable, and they allow you to hook up batteries. If you have a solar system that does not have a battery and the power goes out, you have no power no matter how much solar you have. Those are all dependent upon the grid being in existence and being able to match the power that's there so that you don't electrocute some lineman trying to hook back up your power for you. Solar panel portability, folding panels versus fixed panels. If you're in a location where you can have, I have a very unique case with my RV. I have fixed panels on the RV. I have fixed panels on the solar shed. But when I travel, I have panel problems if I'm traveling into a warmer area. I moved to Florida from Texas, so I like to go back to Texas and visit friends and stuff like that. Texas doesn't have the coolest weather year-round. So you do have a tendency to use more power when you're in heated areas and run the air conditioner more. Not to mention, me and my wife both like to sleep with the air conditioner very cold at night. It makes for a good night's sleep. It's pure as simple as that. So it's important that you understand those backup plans, that you understand that fixed panels and portable panels are not the same thing. They don't produce the same way, and their life expectancy isn't the same. A typical fixed panel has less than between 0.5% and 1% of degradation per year. Most people think they deteriorate really quick and go away. They don't. Now, the connectors will wear out. Sometimes the cables will wear out. You may have to do some maintenance on that. But buying used panels is a solid deal. The initial investment has already been made, and you can get a great thing. There's links for used panels down below, and I think they're actually in the channel here also. Shop Solar and Santan Solar have some really good used deals. Now, with buying used panels, keep in mind that the deals don't last forever. They're not like they have a big warehouse full of them. They do the same thing that I do when I'm finding my panels. They find people that are looking to upgrade. They find solar farms that are closing down. They find homes that are selling them. So they may only have 1 pallet of them or 2 pallets of them or 10 pallets of them, and then they're gone. So the deals are good, but you have to move when you find something that you really want. Keeping extension cords and power strips in a useful location, it was probably one of the biggest hurdles that I ran into. I have a nice power station, and I probably could show it to you. I have a nice power station that plugs into a 50 amp breaker, Home Depot, a 50 amp breaker, and turns it into a bunch of 110 wall outlets. Let's see, power station, see if I can find it here. Turns it into a bunch of wall outlets so that I can run a whole bunch of different things off of. Oh, here it is. Let me see if I can show it to you here. So this thing here, you can plug in a 50 amp plug right over here, and then you get all of these circuits, these 120 amp circuits and stuff. This thing is fantastic at conventions, at shows. So I had this at the house. I used the food trailer. I had the food trailer there, so I had a small 24 volt, 200 amp hour system that I could use. And I had fortunately I had the 9500 inverter generator from that I used for the food truck. And then I had this, and I was able to run a 50 amp cord right into a big 220 amp cord right into the house But running extension cords and everything from this is what really got me, because I had no way to hook it up to the house. I had no way to test it. I had no way to isolate those critical panels that we talked about, those critical loads. So I had to unplug the refrigerator and plug it in over here. And I had to unplug this and plug it in over there. And I had to plug the cell phones into this and run an extension cord for that. So this is one of those things that was enormously grateful that I had it. But a little bit of planning ahead of schedule could have changed the whole thing for me on this, the whole way I look at things. Where am I going here? Let's see. Small solar generator as a backup to grab and go can be very useful too. And what I mean by that is it's wonderful to have these nice big solar systems. But if you have to hit the road and you need to move quickly, those solar generators are priceless, because they're convenient, they're safe, they're reliable, they're all UI rated, they keep everything great, and they're great there. The DIY is for the long term, the scalable solutions, the solar panel portability. Those don't have the life expectancy. They wear out quickly. They die out fast. So I encourage you that if you're going to have those, that you take really good care of them, because they're much more, what is the word for it? They are much more fragile than regular solar panels, because they get moved around, and because of all that. Their life expectancy isn't the 0.5% or 1% a year. I would venture to guess they're probably 5 to 10% a year. They lose a lot of efficiency over time, and the wear and tear on them is much greater. So test your system before the actual outage so that you know it works. Bonus thing, living in an RV, one of the things I learned that was really, really helpful, and running this channel and being able to produce things for you guys. Yes, Gene, I'll get right to that. Let me just go over this real quick, and I will answer that question. That is a great thing to point out. Bonus tip, there are a lot of LED lights, 12-volt fans, and small freezers. I did a refrigerator freezer one that plugs into 12 volts and 24 volts, ran off of a car battery. I ran it for 7 days on one charged car battery with no solar. Even a trickle charger would have been enough to actually probably run that refrigerator or freezer for a very long time. The 7 days that it ran on one battery, it was a 100 amp hour 12-volt battery. It probably could have ran for 3 weeks had I had a little trickle charger running on it. So keep in mind those devices that don't require inverters, the lights. Living in an RV, I have a lot of 12-volt devices anyway, so I don't have to have the inverter on for everything. But small freezers, things like that. One other thing I learned during the hurricane was that it is always cheaper and easier to store ice in a deep freeze. The power consumption for that and a refrigerator is the same, but you can always use the ice to refrigerate things for longer periods of time. So storing the ice in the deep freeze is actually a great way to keep frozen things frozen, and then transfer some of the ice and the frozen things to a refrigeration and use them as they thaw as the refrigeration unit. It was a very, very handy way for me to extend the life of everything that I had. Fortunately, I had a deep freeze full of ice in the food trailer, which was invaluable when it came time for the hurricane. One of the things that Gene has brought up, and I want to bring it up here on the screen, is you might please discuss if it is worth it to get scratch and dent panels to repair and use if they are not too badly damaged. I heard that companies get rid of large numbers at once, and some are still okay. Absolutely, this is if you look at the links that I've got for shop solar kits, and santan. And matter of fact, let's just do that right here while we're on the subject. I'm going to click on this one here, and we are going to see if I can click on it. Okay, here we go. So you can see here these used panels, and open box, and open box. So this is shop solar kits. Now, if I open the santan, they will almost always have some scratch and dent type things, and scratch and dent and other types of things. So here you can see these have cracked vinyl. These have solar panels with green bus bars, meaning that they just didn't get painted, and the panels are probably fine. So you'll notice here on this Santan Solar Link, they do a lot of this. They do a lot of used panels. The deals change out here constantly. They are a fantastic company to work with, and if you use the links, obviously I get a small commission from it also. And let's see. So they do a lot of use, and today they have specifically. I mean, if you look at this list, it just goes on and on and on of used panels here, and they will give you a list of what's broken with them. So you can see here, this one's got snail trails. They've got mono panels with black frames. So a lot of the times they're cosmetic damages, and there's no harm to them, and there's no damage to them. And you can look up the meaning of a lot of these out there and see what the problem is in the manufacturing process that went wrong, or something like that. If they're selling them new, they have to be perfect, or they can't charge full price. So a lot of them will end up here being clearanced for a fraction of the cost. I mean, you can see here, and this is a lot of 24 panels for $375. Now, they're not all big, new, fancy panels, but a lot of these panels are still good panels. And yes, if you get some of them, you may have to do some repairs on them. I bought some used panels from a guy once, and every one of the connectors had to be replaced. But to be honest with you, it's one of those things that wear out so frequently that replacing $10 worth of solar connectors on the end of them, you want them to all be the same brand anyway to be safe. So it really wasn't that big of a deal, and it saved me thousands in panel cost. Now let's go back to your question over here is, oh, I see. Got to leave that screen over here, or I can't use it, can I? Sorry, LG equals large. Yeah, I figured that out after I read through the rest of it. No, you're fine. Out of characters, yep. And one more question: is there a good source for learning the basics of solar and basic electricity? There are. I do a lot of basic solar videos. There's a whole chapter, or there's a whole playlist in my channel for it, and I'm constantly doing new sections about it and stuff like that. But there are a ton of good electricians and electricity type, basic electricity. I've even done a few of them on that too, about different electricity things, but there is a ton on YouTube. My suggestion is you go find a good YouTube channel where somebody who posts good quality videos, and if you can't find one, write me after the live stream. Just send me an email, or write me in the comments and ask me for one, and I will tell you one of mine, because there's a half a dozen of them that I watch also. I get almost all of my content off of YouTube. If I'm not posting it, then there's somebody that is, or I'll find somebody that does, and gives you a good source for that. But absolutely. All right. Did I finish the solar for emergencies? I got to do a little bit of a wrap up here on solar for emergencies. I'll put that QR code back up on the screen for a few minutes. So So the important thing to remember about solar for emergencies is even a small solar system can keep lights on, keep your phone charged, keep things like that. A little bit bigger system, you can keep refrigerators running, medical equipment, and kind of get back to somewhat of a normal life as long as you've done some of that prep that we talked about earlier. You get into even bigger off-grid systems where the grid went down, and you can get into where life can be almost completely normal. I know in my RV at this point, half the time my grid's unplugged, I don't even know it's unplugged until I go to say I need to do something, and I want to go into backup mode or something, bypass, and there's no grid there. So you can go from one extreme to the other. But that's it comes down to affordability, how much of it. A lot of people talk about with solar systems and what is the payback time frame, and my question to them always is, well, what is the payback for your car? You could buy an Uber every time you want to travel, but you don't want the inconvenience of having an Uber. That doesn't mean it's essential. Same thing's true with electricity. You can pay the electric company all the time, but that doesn't mean you have the convenience of having power all the time, and with the hurricanes and stuff like that. So the same thing's true there. I've linked a bunch of different systems and stuff in the link. Give you an idea of different solar systems, different kits and stuff like that for the DIY. I've also linked a bunch of power stations and stuff like that, and it should help you get a little bit of an idea of what you're going to need to do it. But if you have questions or problems with the codes, or questions about off-grid, about what's essential, what am I trying to say here? What are the essential loads? What is an essential load panel or something like that? Feel free to let me know in the comments. And if you have specific installations that you want to go over, I do a lot of consultations. You can schedule those right on my website. They're always in the comments. You can get to that. All right. That was the 5th subject. And I have one more for the night. As long as I didn't miss any comments, it looks like I've got everything. Gene, if you've got anything else, please let me know. I'll be glad to answer them. This last subject is one of those that I try to have when I know my wife isn't watching, and hopefully she's not online tonight. If you were going to build your system again today, what would you do that was different? This always comes down to, what are the things that cost you a lot of money would you change? And so it's kind of a... I've built multiple solar systems, and along the way I've made some mistakes. I mean, we're all human. We all do it. If I could start over, what would I do differently? And when I was